the three sections in A Passage to India are very mathematically prepared, because in the first section we find the conflict. We find the relationship or the juxtaposition between the Indians and the Anglo-Indians in the first section. The setting of this novel is Chandrapur. It's a city of India, but this city does not have any existence in reality. It's a projection of E.M. Forster's imagination. As it's a fiction, it is not a book of history. For that reason, E.M. Forster has projected this city as the setting of this novel, the city of Chandrapur. And Ronnie Hislop is the city magistrate. And there are some other English characters or Anglo-Indians. For example, Mr. Starton, Mrs. Starton. We find also Cyril Fielding. And gradually we find Mrs. Moore and Adela Quested joining them. So these Anglo-Indians characters constitute the community, Anglo-Indian community. And we find the Indian characters, for example, Dr. Ajis, then Godbole, the Brahmin, who was a principal of a government college and a very virtuous man. He's a Brahmin and he speaks very few words, and it seems a kind of meditative atmosphere hangs over him all the time. Actually, Ajis is the major character around which all other characters and all other incidents revolve. Adela Quested and Mrs. Moore have recently come to India with a view to seeing the good India. Actually, while living in England, it was the perception of the Europeans living in their countries, for example, in England, in France, in Portugal, they had a very wrong perception. So the wrong perception about India, they thought that India would be a very good country. Its climate, its people and culture would be very congenial for them. India would be a country of their fantasy. It is a romantic country, variegated in colors and diversities. But while they came to India, they were frustrated. The first thing that frustrated them was its climate. Suppose now this is the month of April, and you know that the heat is scorching. If you go outside without umbrella and stand in the sun for 5 minutes, you will find that your complexion will get tanned. You will not be able to identify your own complexion. So why? Because of excessive ultraviolet ray of the sun. But this ultraviolet ray of the sun is not available in England, because you know that out of 12 months of the year, 10 months, during 10 months, the sky of England remains clouded. The winter is very cold there. Ice falls or frost falls everywhere. But here in India, the atmosphere is very sultry and suffocating. And this climate is also congenial to tuberculosis, TB. And you also know that this India earned a very bad name as a country of cholera, plague, and tuberculosis. If you go to Calcutta today, and if you visit some cemetery, you will find lots of graves of the Anglo-Indians, that is the English people. And most of the English people whose grave you will find there were teenagers, adolescents. They were 19 or 20 or 26 or 27. So this was the range of their age. These young people died here. So why? Because they died of cholera, or they died of dysentery, they died of tuberculosis. Actually, they could not adapt themselves with the climate of India. So India was a horrible country for them. Suppose Africa was a horrible continent for the English. Why? Because Africa was a land of malaria. Many English people, suppose 100 English people went to Africa, only 10 people could come back alive from Africa, and 90 people died of malaria. So the English did not have any shield against these calamities. India was also a country of very, what should we say, calamitous climate. And the climate of this India was congenial for tuberculosis or cholera or plague, dysentery. Actually, these are very common diseases of India. And if you go to different shrines of the Hindus in India, you will find that all those shrines, or most of the shrines, are very dirty. Flies are flying there. The birds are also there. People are sitting in the midst of lot of rotten things. Different obnoxious or stinking smell is coming out from different corners. Actually, this is a very common picture. This was a very common picture at that time. And today, I think there are some innovations or some changes because of the development of education. But in the past, even many English people who visited different shrines of the Hindus were frustrated at the unhygienic atmosphere of those shrines. Okay, you will find monkeys and human beings are eating from the same plate. The monkeys are, or the apes are worshipped here by the Hindus. You know? So, and it is very dangerous for health, because those animals carry some dangerous germs. And if those germs are infused into your body, you have the chance to be infected by those diseases, the diseases carried by those animals. So Indians are living with all these things. Indians are living with all these things. And for that reason, the average longevity of the people of this subcontinent was very low. It was, suppose in my boyhood, while I was a student of class 5 or 6, I learned from the books that the average longevity of Bangladeshi people was 27 years. Only 27 years. Now the digit has been altered. Now it is 72 or 73. So why it was 27 years only? suppose 35 years ago or 40 years ago, it was only 27 years, the longevity of the people of Bangladesh. Why? Because all these diseases were very rampant here. In my childhood, I have found many people dying of cholera, dying of dysentery, dying of tuberculosis. In my childhood, I saw many people died of plague. But today, the intensity of these diseases have decreased. You know that these diseases are also controlled by vaccination or different other medicines or antidotes. Okay, so the British people had a very noble idea because they learned about India from their literature. Suppose from their Arabian Nights. Arabian Nights is an Arabic romance. The British people read it. And in Arabian Night, you will find a dreamy world, a fantastic kingdom. And that very world is located in the Middle East. And in India, they also learned about India. India is a land of plenty. India is a land of happiness. India is a land of repose, rest. There is no hasty. There is no hasty mode of life, or there is no unrest of life. So that was the perception of the British people. So Adela Quested and Mrs. Moore came to India with a purpose. So what's their purpose? Their purpose was to see good Indians. You will find this phrase, good India. You will find this phrase in this text of Passage to India. Yes, they came here. Adela Quested also came here to marry Ronnie Hislop. So this is another important aspect that you have to think from historical perspective. If you read another novel by George Orwell, the name of the novel is The Burmese Days. If you read this text, The Burmese Days, you will find here Elizabeth, the heroine of that novel, came to Burma, our present-day Myanmar, to marry an Englishman, an English merchant. So this very particular practice of the English women shows that the British people came here. They came here not with their wives or not with their girlfriends. They came here alone. And ultimately they married the women here. But they did not marry Indian women, remember this. Because the English were very much conscious of the purity of their blood. If you read Tennyson once said very proudly that no blood is English blood, no nation is English nation. So why did he say so? He said so because he was very much confident that the English did not let anybody mix with their blood. So that very particular vanity of the English people is reflected here. So Adela Quested came to India. So why? Because she wanted to marry Ronnie Hislop. And it also tells us that the Anglo-Indians did not choose any woman from India as their wives. Okay. Anyway, Mrs. Moore came and Adela Quested also accompanied her. And for the first time, Mrs. Moore met Dr. Aziz in a mosque. So it's a very dramatic scene. In a very dramatic situation, Aziz met Mrs. Moore. And you have to know the situation. So what's the situation? That is Mr. Taunton. Dr. Aziz has gone to meet his distant relative, Hamidullah. Hamidullah was his distant relative. And Hamidullah's wife, that is Mrs. Hamidullah, was Dr. Aziz's aunt, distant aunt. So Aziz went to attend lunch there. But there, unfortunately, he received an information, a message that he would have to meet Mr. Calendar. Mr. Calendar was the surgeon, the chief surgeon of the hospital. So Aziz could not complete his lunch. He left Hamidullah's house and he started riding on his bicycle. He rode on his bicycle. And an important incident is described here. Aziz's bicycle did not have any bell. So it is very strange. His bicycle did not have any bell. Okay. And after passing a significant distance, a tire was punctured. A tire of his bicycle was punctured. So he could not ride on the bicycle. Then he hired a tonga. Tonga means the horse cart, ghoda gadi. So he hired a tonga and rushed towards the quarter of Mr. Calendar. Okay. Now, one thing that I just like to interpret, why doesn't Dr. Aziz's bicycle have any bell? And what does the writer mean to implicate through this absence of bell in the bicycle of Aziz? Actually, E.M. Forster depicts the disposition of the Indians or the habits of the Indians through this scene. How? The Indians usually talk unnecessarily. So when they ride on bicycle, they keep talking or speaking with the people in the road. Okay. So the pedestrians are already informed that the bicycle is coming. So the bell is not necessary because the rider always keeps talking. So through this particular scene, E.M. Forster has focused on this particular characteristic of the Indians, that Indians speak unnecessarily and almost all the time. So we do not need any bell in our bicycle. This is number one. And number two, the Indians are not serious. They do not know the value of time. So they ride on bicycle very slowly. So there is no chance of making any accident. So these two negative aspects of Indian character are mentioned, are implicated in this particular scene. Okay. So anyway, Aziz went to Mr. Calendar's house by hiring a horse cart. As soon as he was there, Mrs. Calendar and Mrs. Leslie, that is Mrs. Calendar's friend, Mrs. Leslie, took up the tonga and they asked the tongawala to go. So the tongawala took those foreign ladies and went out. And Aziz could not pay the fare also to the tongawala. Okay. And Aziz came to know from the house of Mr. Calendar that he had already left. Aziz was angry because he was informed, he was called for, and he left the lounge and he came to meet his boss, Mr. Calendar. But Mr. Calendar did not show any courtesy by leaving a message for him or by leaving a letter for him or written note for him. So Aziz felt very humiliated or offended. So this scene is very essential to understand the relationship between the Indians and the Anglo-Indians. The Anglo-Indians did not care the Indians. Aziz expected that his master, that is his boss, Mr. Calendar, would care him. He would, out of courtesy, leave a message for him. But he did not leave a message for him. He went out. So just think of the attitude of the English people towards the local Indians. That is, the Indians were not very important persons. So why should they show any courtesy to them? So this scene helps us understand the relationship between the Indians and the Anglo-Indians. So Aziz was really shocked and felt humiliated. And it was evening. It was the time of Maghrib prayer. So he went into a mosque. There was a mosque there. It was lonely. The mosque was lonely. There was nobody inside the mosque. So there was a mosque and he went there. He washed his hands and face. And suddenly, he found an old woman. Actually, he could not understand that the woman was old. Actually, he found a lady. It was dark because the night was falling and the day was receding. In such a very juncture of light and darkness, he saw Mrs. Moore, that is a woman. Actually, at first, he could not understand that it was Mrs. Moore because that was the first meeting. And Mrs. Moore's head was covered with a scarf. So Aziz from afar shouted to that woman. He told the lady, "Oh, lady, please put off your shoes, put off your shoes." And that very lady replied that she had already put off her shoes outside the mosque. So just think of the gap of communication. Aziz thought that the lady, the foreign lady, did not know the manners of the mosque. She did not know the courtesy of the mosque, or she did not have any idea about the holiness of the mosque. And nobody is allowed in the mosque with sandals. Aziz knew it very well. And he also knew, or he also had a very firm belief that the English woman did not know it. But from the reply of Mrs. Moore, it is clear that she had already known about the manners of the Muslims inside the mosque. So this very particular scene helps us understand how well prepared the British people were. The British people came to this subcontinent with sufficient knowledge about the culture, about customs, belief system, and behavior of the Indians. And that is the reason for which it was possible for them to reign in this subcontinent for nearly 200 years. So knowledge is power. So why do people say like this? Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power because if you can achieve knowledge of a particular community of people or race of people, you will have the advantage to exercise your domination or hegemony upon them. So knowledge helps you understand their psychology. Knowledge helps you understand their weaknesses. And if you can understand or locate their weaknesses, you will be able to strike at the most vulnerable part of those people, and they would not have any defense against your uh, attack. Then they would show their loyalty or submission. That is called British policy. So knowledge is power. We only enunciate this sentence, but we cannot understand the meaning of this sentence. The British could understand the true meaning of this enunciation, that is, knowledge is power. Because if you go back to the history in 1774, Warren Hastings put emphasis on the translation of Sanskrit books of the subcontinent into English. So why? Not because that he loved the Indians and he wanted to translate the Indian texts into English. It is not like this. Actually, he wanted to do this for achieving knowledge of the Indian customs, religions, and belief systems. And what would he do with that knowledge? He would govern the people or rule the people with the knowledge of people. Understand? Suppose if anybody wants to control you, he will take resort to your religion because you have loyalty to your religion. You believe in Islam or Islamic creeds and norms and belief. Okay. So if anybody wants to control you, he will take resort to your Islam. Suppose he will stop you from doing income generating job, then what will he do? He will take help from Hadith or Sunnah or from Quran, and he will tell you that if you go outside and if you are visible to the other people's eyes, you will be sinners, and if you are a sinner, you will go to hell. So your knowledge is used by him as a tool to control you. Actually, this is the meaning of the axiomatic pronunciation that knowledge is power. So your knowledge is the power of others, and those others will exercise power upon you through your own knowledge. So if you are loyal to your knowledge, or if you are very much submissive to your knowledge, then your knowledge may be used by the other people to control you. And that happens in this subcontinent. So anyway, suppose the Asiatic Society. The Asiatic Society, what did Asiatic Society do? Asiatic Society was established in 1794 by William Jones. And William Jones was an Orientalist, and he established Asiatic Society to translate the books of Asia into English. So why? Because he wanted to learn the Asians. So why did he want to learn the Asians or Asian habits? Because the English wanted to rule the Asians. Okay. So this is called knowledge is power. As they achieved our knowledge, as they took up our knowledge, they controlled us with our knowledge. Understand? So you will find the reflection of this very particular historical truth in Mrs. Moore's response to Dr. Ajiz's shout. Ajiz shouted at the lady, "Oh, lady, please put off your shoes outside." And Mrs. Moore told him that she had already put off her shoes outside. That is, she had already known the manners, the custom of the Indians. Understand? She received all this knowledge And with all these information and knowledge, she had come to India. That was the typical behavior of the Europeans who came here and ruled the people here. Understand? Anyway, Dr. Aziz ultimately approached the lady, and he found that the lady was really an old woman. She was an old woman because all her hair was gray. And the lady also informed Dr. Aziz, that is disclosed to Dr. Aziz, that the city magistrate, Ronnie Hislop, was her son. And Aziz also started gossiping with the lady. He revealed his personal life. He told the lady that his wife was dead and his two children live with their grandmother and grandfather. Aziz's wife is dead. About Aziz's wife, it is said that Aziz did not love his wife. Okay, Aziz did not love his wife initially. But when he started loving his wife died. So it is very strange, interesting. Aziz did not love his wife, but when he started loving his wife, she died. So this very particular attitude of Aziz towards his wife also discloses the patriarchal attitude of men towards women in this subcontinent. Actually, in our subcontinent, a man, when marries a woman, he thinks that it is his duty to control the lady, to give protection to the lady, or to make the lady 100% dependent on him. So this very attitude proves that he is superior to the lady. The lady does not have any capability to protect herself or to save herself. So it is not the duty of a man to love a lady, because if a man loves a lady, then that is marked as softness, that is marked as a womanly behavior. So when a man loves a woman, he becomes weak, he becomes soft. And softness always goes with women, not with men. This is called patriarchal attitude. Understand? And this very particular behavioral trait is available among the men of this subcontinent. Understand? But at present, the time has changed. If you think of the past instance, in the past, only the heroines danced in the cinema. The hero did not usually dance. So why? Because it was thought that dancing is a womanish behavior and it is available with the woman. But while feminism started taking its shape, then we find a kind of balance. That is, the boys also started dancing. Now in our cinema, the boys also dance with the girls. Okay, so it is an attempt to give a message that the activities are shared by both men and women. This is a kind of attempt to achieve gender equality. But in the past, the situation was not like this. Though today, gender equality is not 100% achieved, and it will not be achieved in near future. I do not know when it will be possible. Anyway, this very particular disposition is clear through the attitude of Dr. Aziz. Dr. Aziz did not love his wife initially, But when he started loving his wife died. So just think of the relationship between husband and wife. Here, it is a relationship of domination and submission. The husband will dominate and wife will submit. Okay, so in this way, E.M. Forster has disclosed different dimensions of Indian society.